Over the past few weeks, we've been talking about how clarity, confidence, follow through, simplicity, and building rhythms actually help support your life. All of that work matters because clarity is meant to lead somewhere. Alignment is more meant to not to stay internal forever. Eventually, that alignment needs to turn into movement. So today, I want to talk about that bridge, the space between discernment and decision. Welcome to the Flourish podcast for faith-driven women who are ready to take responsibility for their health, time, and calling. I'm Stephanie Book, and I coach women to gain clarity, create simple systems, and build intentional structure so they can move forward with consistent, faith-led action in the work God is calling them to build. If you're ready to live and lead with alignment, peace, and purpose, this is the place for you. Let's begin. I hear phrases like this from so many women. I feel like I know what I'm supposed to do, or I sense that direction, or I have clarity. But there's the but. There's still some hesitation, still waiting, still one more podcast, one more prayer, one more confirmation, all of these things that we think need to line up before we are moving ahead. And I want to say this gently and honestly, and this is for me as well. Clarity doesn't always come with confidence. Sometimes clarity comes quietly. Sometimes it feels steady and not very dramatic. Sometimes it feels like it's like a lightning bolt, like everything is coming at you and you're just like, I know it's going to happen. And sometimes it just feels like a little nudge that just won't go away, that you just feel it. I know you felt that before too. That can be really uncomfortable, especially if you're someone who likes to be ready before you move, have everything in line, right? That is definitely an uncomfortable feeling. So today, I want to help you understand what faith-led decision making actually feels like, what tends to keep us stuck in discernment mode, and how to move forward without rushing or forcing anything that's not meant for us to carry. One of the biggest misunderstandings about discernment is that we think we're supposed to remove all of that uncertainty. We assume that when something is aligned, we'll feel completely sure, completely peaceful, and completely confident. Well, I have to tell you, unfortunately, that's not reality. Discernment often brings clarity about direction before you have that emotional connection, that certainty. You may not feel quite bold yet. You might not feel confident yet. And you might not even feel fully ready. However, you have that quiet knowing that this is your time to move into that season. And sometimes when we're searching for clarity, we fall into that trap of delay rather than discern. There's a difference, though, between that discern and delay. So let me unpack that just a little bit. So discernment is about listening, aligning, and becoming clear. But delay, that often comes from fear, perfectionism, or the desire to protect yourselves from that discomfort. And goodness, we know what that discomfort is like. Sometimes discernment might just feel even safer than deciding. Discernment feels spiritual. Decision feels vulnerable. Why is that? Well, because once you decide, you become responsible for your next step. And that can be super scary, right? It can be really, really scary. One thing I've noticed in my own life and coaching other women is that often we want God to have that big, huge picture in front of us. I actually was talking to someone this morning at church, and we were talking about this very thing. Like she said, I loved how she said, I wish that I would just had a letter that God wrote out to me, said exactly, this is what you're supposed to do over the next 5 years. That's what we all want, right? We're discerning, we're spending that time in God's word, and we know that we're meant to move into something, and we have that sense that we're ready. We will delay over and over again because we are just wanting to make sure everything is just right. Everything is lined up. We want that big, huge, I always think of it as like a big billboard sign, right? When you see those movies or different things and they're like, go this way, right? You want God to say, okay, turn right, not left, and you'll be fine. But I think a lot of times God wants us to make those decisions, trusting in Him. And sometimes we really have a great perspective of we have that full-on discernment that we are going to step forward and we're really sure. And sometimes I think God allows us to be obedient and take a step, and He just wants us to take that step. And honestly, like He has the path that He wants us to go on. And I know that we want to take the straight path. We want to take the path that He's designed for us. But sometimes I think He also wants us to step in and in obedience and just step forward. And we might not know if decision A or decision B is what's best, because maybe they're both okay. Maybe they look good on both sides, and we can spend time in discernment. But I think there is that spot where we are just afraid. We'll delay because we're afraid that we're going to take the wrong choice, or not everything feels right, or all these different things. And I don't want to say you need to take steps out of emotion. This is what we're talking about as you've spent time in discernment, as you've been in the Word, you've been praying, you've been taking this to God. I'm saying that there's times there where we can just be stuck in that discernment rather than and delay our decision making. And so that's where I want to help you see the difference and understand that faith-led movement doesn't always have a perfect plan. Okay. Scripture shows us often, over and over again, that God reveals that step one little step at a time. I love talking about one step at a time, don't I? But Scripture shows that too. Proverbs tells us that the Lord directs our steps, and He doesn't hand us the entire map, right? It means movement is part of how that clarity deepens as we step in. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path," right? We've heard this before. It's a popular verse, and sometimes we might see it on different places, but we really want to trust in what He has for us and believe that that's what He has for us. And this is where your trust grows, not because you suddenly feel fearless or everything is perfect, but because you chose to move forward while trusting God to meet you in your obedience. So I thought, I love being able to read different passages or different translations or paraphrases of different passages. And so I thought, for some reason, let me just check out the Message. Sometimes the Message can speak in different it's a different speech. It's a good paraphrase of the Bible. It wouldn't be a translation, because there's a little bit of what's the right word? Creative liberty maybe put into that a little bit, but sometimes it's kind of nice to hear in different words. But I'm going to actually read Proverbs 3, 1 through 10 in the Message paraphrase. "Good friend, don't forget all I taught you. Take to my heart commands. They'll help you live a long, long time, a long life lived full and well. Don't lose your grip on love and loyalty. Tie them around your neck. Carve their initials on your heart. Earn a reputation for living well in God's eyes and the eyes of the people. Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you on track. Don't assume that you know it all. Run to God. Run from evil. Your body will glow with health. Your very bones will vibrate with life. Honor God with everything you own. Give Him the first and the best. Your barns will burst. Your wine vats will brim over." Isn't that great? I love that full picture of the obedience. And when it says in verse 6, it says, "Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who'll keep you on track. Don't assume that you know it all. Run to God." I love that. So don't assume you know it all. You don't have to have it all. You're just going to take that step of obedience and trust Him. He's going to lead you there. And if you make the wrong turn, it's okay. If you're continuing to seek Him, He's going to get you back on that right path. So we want to take that time to discern, but we also don't want to be in that delay. In Mark 11, where Jesus approaches the fig tree, from a distance, the tree looked alive. It looked productive. But when He drew closer, there was no fruit at all. In Mark 11, it says, "On the following day, when they came from Bethany, He was hungry," speaking Jesus. "And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, He went to see if He could find anything on it. When He came to it, He found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And He said to it, 'May no one ever eat fruit from you again.' And His disciples heard it." So a little time goes on, and then they wake up in the morning and they pass by this tree. Verse 20, it says, "As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And Peter remembered and said to Him, 'Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed is withered.' And Jesus answered them, 'Have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also in heaven may forgive you your trespasses." The fig tree had the appearance of health, but there was no substance of fruit. And that's sometimes, honestly, how burnout feels like. Our lives can look full calendars, full responsibility, full effort, but underneath, we're exhausted and we're not producing anything that we've hoped for. After that tree withers, Jesus doesn't tell the disciples to go find some other farming strategy. He just says, have faith in God, right? So burnout often reveals where we've been trusting our systems or our discernment even more than the source. And so sometimes we're just trying to do it all and decide it all and spend that time in that decision where really Jesus just wants us to trust him and move forward. We will trust our hustle. We'll trust our routines. We'll trust our control. But that's not what God designs. Jesus directs them and us back to dependence on him. Fruit is not forced. It grows from alignment. And when our structure no longer matches God's timing, we can end up with leaves without life. We don't want to be one of those trees. Discernment isn't just about hearing God clearly. It's about willing to respond when clarity comes. So we don't want to be stuck in discernment and delaying our movement. And though it doesn't always, we might not have the whole picture in mind, but we want to step in obedience. And it might be a tiny step forward, but then God will honor us as we step into that obedience. James also reminds us when we ask God for wisdom, he gives it generously. But clarity grows when our heart is steady. That doesn't mean we never wrestle. It just means we're willing to move when God leads instead of staying stuck in that hesitation. Okay. I think I've talked about that part enough, but there's also something important to name here. Not every hesitation is wisdom, and not every sense of urgency is obedience. And I feel like I'm telling you one thing and telling you another, but sometimes as you're in that time of discernment, as you are seeking God for the right direction, you will understand the difference between your delaying or your hesitating. Hesitation is actually fear dressed up as discernment. So sometimes urgency is pressure dressed up as purpose. Faith-led decision-making feels different than hustle. It will feel steady. It will feel grounded. It doesn't rush you, but it does invite you forward. So if you're feeling that sense of, oh my goodness, you're discerning and you're spending time, there's a difference. You almost have that. You just know. You know that you spend time with the Lord and you're like, this feels like the right step. And not just feeling, but you've had that time and you feel that nudge to move forward. And then sometimes you just have that feeling. There's just, as you're connecting with God, you just think maybe a hesitation is here for a reason. There's a difference between a hesitation with discernment versus just a quick flip decision that you haven't spent time with the Lord in that time of decision and just praying. And I know that there's been times where I have made those decisions and thought like, okay, this is really what I'm supposed to do. But I think that sometimes I've made that decision, stepped into that thinking or maybe wanting it so much, but not really discerning what it is. And you know what? That's okay. You make those decisions and then God reroutes you as you step in that obedience. So I promise you'll be okay if you make the wrong decision. But sometimes we have that hesitation. There's something in our heart that's stirring that just doesn't feel right. I was listening to something and there was a situation where there was nothing wrong with what the speaker was talking about, but I just was feeling like this was not, my heart just said, this might be the time to leave this conference that I was listening to online. There was nothing wrong. And I'm not going to judge what was said or not said. I don't know, but I just knew that it was probably the best time for me to step off of that call. And it's okay. There was a hesitation there that I no longer wanted to be part of what was going on. And there was good intentions. And I know that person was probably really passionate about what she was speaking about. But for me, I just had that discernment that I thought, this is not what's going to be best for me. So sometimes we will have those as hesitations. And I think those are also when we're spending time in the Word, when we're connecting with God and praying Him and inviting into our decisions, it's okay. We might have those moments that we need to have that time of discernment. Is this discernment, are we delaying because of fear, or are we hesitating because there's something else there that maybe is not right for us in the season? So a simple way that you can check this in your own life is ask yourself, does this feel peaceful even if it's uncomfortable? Or does it feel frantic or pressure-filled? So that gives you a little bit of an idea to do that. God's leading often stretches us, but it doesn't scramble us. So keep that in mind as you're making your decision. I want to pause here for just a moment because this whole topic connects to what I'm offering in the month of March. For this month, I'm opening up a few spots for free aligned clarity calls. These are one-on-one conversations where we will slow things down and get really honest about what you're sensing and where you feel stuck, and maybe then deciding what your next aligned step could be. This isn't about pressure or forcing a decision. It's about creating space to discern with intention, prayer, and clarity. If you're in a season where you feel like you're circling that same decision or sensing a shift, but you're not sure where to move forward, this is exactly what these calls are for. So you can call in the comments below, message me on Instagram at steph.book, or all my links are in the show notes below. And then I will give you all the details of how you can apply for these calls. Another thing that helps move from discernment to decision is letting go of the need for perfect readiness. You don't need to be fully prepared to take your next faithful step. You just need to feel willing. Readiness grows as you move. Confidence builds through that obedience. Clarity deepens through the action. Doesn't mean that you're acting recklessly or without that prayer or that discernment, but it means recognizing when continued waiting is no longer about wisdom and is starting to become avoidance. If you've been sensing clarity about the next step a while now, but you keep postponing it, it might be an invitation to gently ask yourself what you're actually waiting for. Is it more information? Is it reassurance? Is it comfort? Maybe permission? Sometimes the permission you're waiting for is the one you're meant to give yourself in that obedience. So I thought I would talk about a few reflection questions that you can sit with this week to help you in this space of decision. So ask yourself, what decision has been quietly forming in my heart for a while now? Where have I been waiting to feel ready instead of simply willing? Another one, what would one small faithful step look like this week if I trusted God with the outcome? This isn't about making big, dramatic moves. It's about choosing the next right step with faith and steadiness. You've heard me say this before, but it applies here very well. From discernment to decision doesn't mean you're rushing your whole process. It means recognize when your season of listening has become a season of moving. And if you're in that space, that right in between space right now, you're not behind, you're just being invited forward. So let's break that down a little bit more. Talking about those questions or reflection questions that you can sit with as you are making these decisions, or walking through a season in your life where maybe there are decisions to make, or you're just carrying a lot of different things. Is there a decision that's been quietly in your heart, in your mind for a while now? What is it there that is there? Are you wanting to move into a new job? Or are you a mom that has been raising her kids and they're getting older and you're wondering, what are you going to do next? Or maybe you really want to step in and start a business from home, or maybe you want to start that ministry. We've talked about all those things. Are there some decisions that you've been quietly forming in your heart for a while now? Are those things that come up and you wonder and then you push them away? Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to start considering those and asking yourself some questions around those decisions. Are you delaying or on those decisions because it's just scary? What could be on your heart or your mind that's been there that you're waiting that might need some attention as you're now stepping into this season? Another one is, where have I been waiting to feel ready instead of simply willing? So I think that's a very strong question to ask, because we can say that we want to make a decision or we really want something, but then a lot of times we're just ready with those air quotes if you're listening, or if we're just we're willing, we're ready to step into that. What fear maybe is based around that readiness that we have. So what have you been waiting to feel ready for instead of just being willing? Is there something that you say that you want to do, but you keep waiting for the ready feeling, and maybe it's time to make that step? Maybe that one step of obedience is where you need to be right now. So I would look over those things. What are you putting on when the time is ready? list, because we all have them, right? Well, when their time is ready, oh, well, I'm going to go back to school when we have this, this, and this in line. I'm going to start my business once I have like set aside. I'm going to start losing weight as soon as this activity is done, and then this activity is done. Well, I'll start going to the gym, or I'll start exercising, or I will start writing my book, or you've got it. You fill in the blank, right? We all have those things that when we will, when everything lines up, then I'm going to start doing this. And let's face it, that doesn't happen. Now, sometimes there's discernment in that, right? We might not want to step into something that is going to keep us away from something else that needs our attention right now. So that's where we talk a lot about the seasons that we're in and discerning whether or not this is the right season for this. But I think often, I know for myself as well, a lot of times I'm waiting for that perfect readiness rather than actually just being willing to step in, take a little bit of a risk, take that extra step in obedience, and trust that God has got me through it. So ask yourself these questions. Maybe journal it out a little bit. Find out what are those things that you're holding on to your heart or holding on, waiting for that perfect readiness that might need your action right now. And then another one is, what would one small faithful step look like this week if I trusted God with the outcome? So as you ponder these questions, first you're going to come up with a decision that's been forming in your heart for a while now. What have you been waiting for the readiness to take that simple step to just be open to exploring that? And then what is the one step that you can take to move toward it? So maybe if you want to write a book, maybe start by setting aside 10 minutes a day to start writing. It could be as simple as, okay, 3 times a week, I'm going to spend 15 minutes writing, whatever it needs to be, but one simple step. It could be, I'm going to write for 10 minutes once a week. I don't care. But you see what I was saying is, what would one small faithful step look like this week if you trusted God with that outcome? Rather than trusting in our own self, we said we already understand what Proverbs was telling us, and trusting and leaning on his own understanding, on him, and allowing him to guide us through that. And if it's not the right season, you will know eventually as you step into it. But most often, he's just waiting for us to take that step of obedience, and he's going to carry us through it. And again, it's not about making big, dramatic moves. It's about choosing the next right step with faith and steadiness, from discernment to decision. And it doesn't mean that you're rushing the process. It just means you're recognizing that when your season of listening has now become the season of moving. And if you're in that in-between space right now, you're not behind. You're just maybe being invited forward to start moving, right? So think about these things this week as you ponder those questions, as you really look at what your first step of obedience could be, and then maybe start moving forward. So as we move through March, we're going to talk more about leadership, about stewardship, obedience without hustle, and really what it looks like to build with peace instead of pressure. All this flows from this moment right here, the moment where clarity becomes movement. So before we close for today, I wanted to have one way to reframe or a statement for you this week. Okay, you don't have to feel confident to move forward. You just have to be willing to take the next faithful step. And God is faithful to meet you there. Okay? All right. Well, I hope that this was helpful. We now understand a little bit different between that discernment and delay. We understand how we want to trust in God as we walk through those steps of obedience, but we do need to take those steps of action to move into that. So use those questions, use a reflection that we talked about today and those questions that we move through, and help you determine what your next best step is to be able to really finally go past the I'm getting ready stage and really into the I'm willing stage. If this episode connected with you, I'd love for you to reflect on one decision you've been circling around about yourself, and what's one small step of obedience that you can look like this week. You would honor yourself by doing that, walking through those steps that we talked about today, and make one decision, make one move towards what you want to create. And if you still need a little bit of support in that next step, remember I have those Align Clarity calls. Just comment call below or message me on Instagram at steph.book, and we can have a quick discussion if this will be a right fit for you. I have an application that you can fill out, and I promise it will be something that will benefit you, and you never know what one conversation can do to help move you forward into what your next step is. So as always, I want you to remember that you are worthy and capable of living a full and flourishing life. Success isn't just possible, it's meant for you. Friends, please pass this on to anyone that you think it would help, because we want all of our friends and the ones that we care about be able to move into those decisions and to no longer delay, but with that discernment and obedience, finally step into where their season is calling them. All right, take care. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this episode encouraged you, I invite you to take one simple, intentional step forward. You will find many resources linked in the show notes to support you as you build with clarity and faith-led action. If this conversation resonated with you, please share the podcast so that this message can reach other women who are ready to move forward with purpose. Until next time, remember, you are worthy and capable of living a full and flourishing life. Success isn't just possible, it's meant for you.